Hi everyone, my name is Vina, aka Miss WOC Reader, and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm just coming at you with my August reading wrap up. During the month of August, I read 12 books. The first book that I read was A Winning Season by Rochelle, Alers, and A Winning Season is a Harlequin romance. It is a part of their special edition line, and this story followed Zoe, who basically had to give up her whole adult life in order to raise her little brothers after her father and stepmother died. And right now she's having a bit of trouble with her little brother Harper. He's acting out a lot, going out and partying and drinking and all types of stuff. He decides that he's going to try and joyride their neighbor's car, and their neighbor is the former baseball player named Sutton. He actually decides to go easy on Harper. He realizes that there are a lot of young black men in the system, and he doesn't want to have to put him through that. So by calling the police, so instead he's going to try and mentor him because he does a lot of mentor work with young black men. So his goal is to get Harper on the basketball team, and he starts like waking him up every morning to go out for runs with him. And while he's mentoring Harper, he starts to fall for his sister Zoe. And Zoe is still reluctant to give love a chance because she hasn't had a boyfriend since she took on the responsibility of raising her younger brothers, and she hasn't put herself first in a long time. So this story, while Zoe and Sutton had good chemistry, there were way too many info dumps for me in this story for me to fully fall in love with it. Also, there was some conflict, which, while I don't mind conflict, I like conflict, and I'm happy that there was no third act breakup. The conflict in its place came way too late at the end of the book to be as easily resolved as it should have been. If it would have come like halfway during the book and then worked itself out by the end, or like even a little bit earlier, I would have appreciated that. But it kind of came in the last chapter. There was a big conflict that came in the last chapter that just resolved too easily, and I couldn't vibe with that. So the next book I read during the month was Redemptor, which is the sequel to Raybearer, which was one of my favorite fantasies of 2020. And Redemptor continues Terrasai's journey. Now she knows that she is also a Raybearer, and she's planning for her trip to the underworld. So she has to put together her own council, and much of the book is her putting together that council, finding people to fall in love with her. She chooses rulers from local realms, and she's kind of struggling to show them the real her because her past is so painful. She wants them to only see the good image of what she is now, and she's finding it hard to lean on her council siblings because she's getting like these visions of like these like dead children who ghost things who are like telling her that she can't win, and they're like really putting her down, and it's driving her crazy, but she doesn't want to lean on anyone for help. And there's a lot going on in this fantasy, between putting together the council, trying to unite the kingdom, preparing for battle. Terrasai still working through her feelings in regards to her family. I found in the middle that it kind of lagged a little bit for me. Like it got really slow, so it took me a while to finish the middle. And while I really enjoyed it, and I did like some of the new characters, I kind of wish we would have seen more of her council siblings. Like most of them are spread across different realms fighting their own battle, and then like she had this really great relationship with Sanjeet in Raybearer, which isn't as present here. I mean, Sanjeet is still around, but then he's gone for a while, and then things are kind of rocky between them, and then there's these new characters coming in, and there's one that seems like he's going to be a big problem for them. So yeah, while I enjoyed Redemptor, I didn't love it as much as Raybear, but overall it was still a really great ending to the duology. And if you love Raybear, I highly recommend you check out Redemptor. So the next book that I read was actually a novelette, and it's called Eight. That is by Rilzy Adams, and Eight is just a quick, erotic romance, something you can read in about 2 hours. I really enjoyed it. It's about this woman named Tempest. She's just sold her business and she's having a celebratory dinner. So she hired a private chef to come to her apartment. Her best friend, who was supposed to make it, ended up having to cancel at the last minute. So the chef, Russ, gets there and Tempest is in a good mood. She's very flirty. They're both kind of vibing with each other, and shit happens. They end up having hot sex all over the kitchen, and it's really great. There's like a few sex scenes in it, and I liked how Rilzy managed to make them all sound different, even though they were like back to back, and they're they're like in the same setting. Each of them were still unique, so I really enjoyed it. I have no complaints about Eight. Like I said, it's a very quick read, and that was definitely a 5 star. Definitely going to check out more Rilzy. So the next book I read during the month was Awaken the Dragon by AC Author, and I read that as one of my reads for the Black Prose Club's Naked Readathon. And Naked is just a celebration of Black love, which we can always use more Black romance recommendations. I don't feel like we see enough of it like in the online book community. So anything that do to spread more Black love and positivity is always a win for me. And Awaken the Dragon was my first Black shifter romance. It's been a long time since I've read a paranormal romance, so that was really interesting. And I really did like the world. Like at first, when I were getting to it, I'm like, oh, is this going to be one of those books where there's very, very little plot? And because right away the characters are like feeling each other, but it actually ended up being good. I enjoyed it. It had some Yoruba mythology. There were dragons, um, werewolves, vampires, fae, witches, goddesses. Pretty much any magical being you could think of is in this world. And in Awaken the Dragon, it follows Shola, and she's getting ready to be married. And the man she is destined to marry is also the man she's destined to kill. And she ends up hiring a security team run by Theo Masters. Theo is half human, half dragon, but he's since abandoned his home in the Far Realm in favor of a small Pennsylvania town where he runs his security company with his fellow dragons in secret. And Shola is just kind of awakening these new feelings in him that he's kept dormant. And they also realize they have a common enemy. So that was just a really interesting read. I actually I listened to it via audiobook on Hoopla. So if you have Hoopla, definitely check it out. AC Author, I read her before, and she always does really steamy sex. Like she gives you just the right balance, and it's I liked the world that this was set in. It gave me cyberpunk vibes, which I was really digging. And yeah, Awaken the Dragon, I thought it was a solid read. Ended up giving it about 4 stars, and definitely check that one out if you're interested in a Black shifter romance. So the next book that I read was A Blues Singer to Redeem Him, and that is by L. Jackson. It's another Harlequin romance, although this time it's Harlequin historical. I usually stay far away from historical romance. I'm not a fan of like the Dukes and Rakes stories at all. Those bore the crap out of me. And I don't usually like to even read the diverse ones because they still a lot of times tend to fall along the lines of, oh, there's this white duke or ig and we're supposed to fall for him. So I was like really hesitant going into this because even though it didn't have the duke vibes, I'm like, ugh, is this going to be another story where there's like a bland white love interest and I'm gonna have to pretend some racism never existed um, in order to buy him as the love interest? And the concept was very interesting to me because this took place in 1920s. It actually doesn't shy away from racism at all. There is a constant threat in this story from the KKK, and the main character Evelyn, she grew up in Greenwood, Tulsa, and had to leave during the Tulsa race riots. Like, she watched her parents get killed in front of her. She lost like all her best friends, and she ends up having to move in with her grandmother and start life over again. Like, it's bad because she's still traumatized and reeling from everything that's happened to her. And because her grandmother is getting up there in age and she needs a nurse to take care of her, Evelyn decides to go out to a nearby city and get a job as a singer in one of the lounges. So she goes to this 24-hour lounge, which is run by Lorenzo. Lorenzo is a mobster's son who has tried to separate himself from the family business, though you can never really truly be separated. Everybody knows who he is, everybody knows his family's reputation, and he's still somewhat of a target. And he runs like a very like integrated lounge, which is also something that's very uncommon in the town, and puts the KKK like on his back because they want him to run the lounge as whites only. And Lorenzo is smitten with Evelyn at first sight, immediately offers her a job. He ends up having to save her from an assault by the KKK and moves her into this fancy apartment above his club. He can't keep himself away from her, even though he knows he should, because he has all these targets on his back, and he actually lost someone he loved before because of the mob. Evelyn is conflicted because she's so used to pain at the hands of white men, and Lorenzo looks like the people who have hurt her, but he's kind and he's helped her out so much. So there's a lot of, I can't be with you because I know it's wrong, and also there's a lot of, I can't be with you because I want to protect you. And after a while with Lorenzo, that kind of got old because it's like, yeah, we understand you're at the constant threat from the mob, but Evelyn is also under constant attack as a black woman. And then, like I said, there is the looming threat of the KKK trying to come after them. So there was a lot going on in this story, but I thought they had good chemistry. I thought the love story was really done in a believable, like realistic way. And that was another one that I ended up giving 4 stars to. Like I said, it was featuring like some violence in regards to the situation in Tulsa, and I thought it did a really good job diving into that history through the eyes of one of the only survivors. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely check that one out. Again, that is A Blues Singer to Redeem Him. So the next book that I read during the month was Foolish Hearts by Synithia Williams, and I did a whole standalone review for this book, so if you're interested in like all my thoughts, definitely check that one out. But what I'll say here is I really love the Jackson Falls series by Synithia Williams. It's like a black southern soap opera set in North Carolina, and it follows the Robidoux family, who are like a black Newman family, or like it kind of gives like Dallas vibes, like with Grant being like a JR type of character. And this one in particular follows Ashia, and she is a Robodo cousin. She stays away from all that corporate nonsense between them. Unlike her cousin Elena, she's not about that. She's perfectly satisfied running this designer thrift boutique. And then one day, her paternal grandmother dies, and her paternal grandmother actually owns this big Fortune 500 company that she's never had any interest in, but her grandmother decides to leave it all to her. Her dad is very happy for her to take the chance at running this corporation because he originally wanted it to. He figured since he can't get it, he wanted it to go to his daughter. While she is reluctant, her family on her dad's side kind of convince her with how much they don't believe in her. And because she knows nothing about running business, she asks her cousin Elena for help. Elena volunteers one of her workers, Russell, to go help her out. And Russell used to have a relationship with Ashia, but Ashia broke his heart. So they have to work together again and travel down to South Carolina to get acquainted with this new business. So if you like family type drama romances, if you like second chance romance, and you like messy conflict, definitely check out Foolish Hearts. It's a really great read, and like I said, as a whole, the Jackson Falls series is a good read. You don't have to read the books in order. My personal favorite of the series was Careless Whispers. So I think if you're going to start with one, start with that one first. Go to Foolish Hearts, then Scandalous Secrets, and then maybe Forbidden Promises last. If you don't care to read them in order, you're not really going to miss anything because while there are characters that appear across all of them, you don't hear much about their stories that will spoil you from their book. So the next book I read during the month was a memoir called Sometimes I Trip on How Happy We Could Be by Nicole Perkins. And this memoir is somewhat of an ode to her love of pop culture. So she kind of has a song or a show that she remembers for different stages of her life. So she's a big fan of Prince, hence the title. And he kind of awakened in her like how she views sexuality because she never saw someone that open and honest, having grown up in a strict Black Christian household in attending church every Sunday. She was so used to, the hush whispers about sex and it's something for marriage, and being taught that about little girls being fast and all types of stuff like that. So she also grew up in a abusive household. Her father was very abusive. He did drugs. Her mother had to find the strength to eventually leave him. So she kind of coincides that with the period when Janet Jackson's Control was taking off, and how her mother ended up kind of using that as like her anthem at the time. Nicole went to an HBCU. She went to Dillard, and she chronicles her time spent there. And that was really interesting with how she contrasted that between her time in grad school going to a white university. And then Nicole also has a lot of relationship issues. She's very, very, very candid about sex. As some of you know her from BuzzFeed, then you may have already read some of the stories in this memoir. She talks about being a Black dom. She talks about all her crazy relationships. She kind of admits she has this obsession with white men and like making a relationship work with them. So she tried all different types of white guys to make this relationship work, and it was very interesting, like the way she detailed all the different things that happened because she dated some crazy people. And she kind of also talks about how when going to the HBCU, at the time, you're expected to find a husband when you go out. So not just a great career, but you're supposed to come out with your perfect black husband. And she was like one of the only ones of her friends who didn't. So she's still struggling with not finding that perfect husband, and she's not sure if she wants kids or not because she thought she would have had that family, and things didn't kind of work out the way she thought they would. Overall, like I said, I think it's a very interesting memoir. I don't normally read nonfiction, but I read through this one pretty fast. It was in an essay format, which made it easy to read. And yeah, I definitely recommend checking that one out. I think if it was, like I said, just the right amount of messiness, that it was like watching a TV show. I was interested. And we liked some of the same pop culture stuff, so that was cool as well. Like, she talked about liking the show Frasier and testing her men by seeing how they reacted to that show. And I think Frasier is a pretty funny. It was one that I voted for a while because I'm like, oh, this is just going to be two pretentious old white men, and that's exactly what it is. But it's smart and funny humor, and I really enjoy that show, and it's one of her faves as well. So yeah, definitely check out Sometimes I Trip on How Happy We Could Be. Even if you're not usually interested in memoirs, that one might surprise you. So the next book that I read during the month of August was Mixed Match by Mia Heinzelman, and that was another romance. And it's indie published, and it follows Sophia, who is newly divorced. She moved to Portland, and right now she doesn't have her life together. Most of her life just consists of sitting around and eating ice cream on the couch and doing horror movie thons. And she ends up getting a knock on her door one day, and she's served papers like from somebody trying to take her house from her, and she's kind of like instantly like lusting over the guy serving her papers, and he's like instantly feeling her as well. And that part was like a little bit like clunky to me because the scene involves her wearing like a tank top with no bra, so like the entire time he's staring at her nipples and she doesn't realize he's staring at her nipples. And I was like, I don't know about this meet cute. Anyway, so the man who served her the papers, his name is Everett. She doesn't realize that he is the one trying to take the house away from her. He served them on behalf of his company, but he never tells her his full name for her to put the connection together. And while she's worried about losing her house, she's still trying to make a space for herself in Portland. She's getting acquainted with the city. She's a big foodie and a former chef, so she's going around to see the different places to eat, and she's exploring like the farmers market. And Everett decides he's gonna help her out, become her new friend, and be her guide. And part of the reason he's doing that is just to see what she's about. And because the house used to belong to his grandma, and it was the house he grew up in, so he wants it back in his family. There's like a long-standing feud between him and the family of Sophia's ex-husband. It's kind of one of those Hatfields and McCoy type rivalry. So this one was pretty interesting. Like I said, it was a little clunky for me at some parts. I couldn't really get on board, but the sex scenes were really good. I thought they were steamy and well done. And when Sophia was able to open up more to Everett, I really appreciated those parts, and we did get to see a different side of him as well. And like particularly when it comes to his family and his complicated relationship with them. And his sister was also in the mix. And the only thing that was kind of hard for me was the entire time of their romance, he's lying to her, so she never actually knows his true identity while she's falling in love with him, and that made it a very hard sell for me. Like, I can't really get behind those types of relationships where you don't really know the person at all. So that one kind of a little conflicting for me. I ended up giving the book 3 stars. But if you don't mind, if you don't mind like the romance where somebody lies the entire time, then you might be interested in Mixed Match. Like I said, it is a story about new beginnings. The next book I read during the month of August was The Rebel Heir by Niobia Bryant. And The Rebel Heir is a Harlequin desire romance. And it follows Jillian, who is a former food blogger turned celebrity chef turned restaurateur turned private chef. After her restaurant fails, she's working for the Crest family, who is like this big chef dynasty. So the father is Black British and the mother is white French, and they were 2 Michelin starred chefs who won a lot of awards, and they have restaurants and magazines and shows and cookware and all that great stuff. All of their sons are award-winning chefs as well. Jillian is working as their private chef in their family compound in New York City. She is having a friends with benefits type relationship with one of the sons, Cole. And one day, Cole's mother comes, bangs down her apartment door, and she's like, I'm not paying you to sleep with my son anymore. I know something's going on between you two if it hasn't already started. So he's like, you gotta go. And she's like, I will be nice and give you an out and send you to one of our restaurants on the West Coast where you're far away from him, but that's all I can do for you. Jillian desperately needs the money because after her restaurant failed, she has a lot of debt. So she decides to go ahead and take the job on the West Coast. Cole gets angry, feels she betrayed him because his ex-girlfriend used him for his money, and he wants nothing to do with her. So they go their separate ways. After a while, Jillian and Cole are both realizing, it's after a year they have feelings for each other. Jillian ends up coming back to New York, and they reconcile, and they decide to try a real relationship, even though they both have their hang-ups. Cole, between his parents and their rocky marriage, and then his situation with the girl who hurt him. He's not ready for a real relationship. And Jillian has 2 failed marriages under her belt. So she's kind of not sure about like how love really works, because at this point she figures, okay, well, she's failed twice now. And this was very interesting. It kind of hooked me from the time Cole's mother went banging down on the apartment door. I knew I had to keep continuing and read what happened. I like the idea of 2 chefs getting together. Like, food romances are my thing. I really enjoy those. And they had great chemistry. I thought the sex was really steamy. The only thing that I did not like was that Alers kind of overused the word tool a lot in place of like dick or penis, and that was kind of like not really feeling that. Like, it kind of made me laugh a little bit when I was seeing it constantly. Other than that, it's a really great romance. If you like your romance have a little bit of messy drama, definitely check out The Rebel Heir. It's a quick read. So the next book I read during the month was Hollywood Homicide by Kellye Garrett, and that one is actually a reread. I originally read it back in 2017, and then I think I read it again in 2018, and it is the first in the Detective by Day mystery series, and it follows Dana Anderson, who is a broke Black actress struggling to make it in Hollywood. She's retired for now, and she's living out of her best friend's closet, can barely scrape together any money, is desperate for a job. Her dad calls her up, lets her know he and mom are in danger of losing their house because they owe a mortgage. So she's gonna try and help them save the house, even though she doesn't even have a savings to fall back on. So she sees a billboard advertising a reward for tips that lead to arrest in a murder, which she happened to be driving by on a night out. And she needs to find as many tips that lead to this arrest as possible so she can claim that reward, which ends up putting her along down this rabbit hole of trying to find the killer, which might not be the craziest thing that happens in Hollywood. So I thought it was really fun. It has a great cast of characters. It's been so long since I read it that I didn't remember who the killer was, so it's almost like reading it anew. The jokes were hilarious. Like, there's this lady who runs a tip line and she has an attitude, and she and Dana kind of go back and forth a little bit, and I really enjoyed that, like the banter between them. And there's a little bit of romance with this actor Amari, who she knows from her hometown, and they've been kind of feeling each other for a while. So there's a crazy cast of characters. They get themselves into all different situations, and yeah, it's just a lot of fun. If you are not quite sure if you like mystery, but you like contemporary stories, then definitely check this one out. It can kind of ease you. You can kind of ease yourself into it and see if that's something you're interested in. There's no like gore, really like any gore or anything that would bother you. And overall, it's just a fun read. So the next book that I read was Bad Witch Burning by Jessica Lewis, and it is a contemporary fantasy with some paranormal and horror elements to it. This was one of the most surprising books that I read during the month. I did not expect it to like as much as I did. I also didn't expect it to be as heavy as it was. Like, when you look at the cover, you don't necessarily like expect it to go into all the topics it goes into. And it touches on neglectful parents, fear of the foster care system, like when adults need to step in and help, like being in abusive situations, and like living in very violent neighborhoods. So there was a lot in this story. It follows Cottrell, who is 17, and she's just saving up her money to get a car so she can get the fuck out. She's tired of her situation. She lives with her mom, and she's working 30 hours a week at this burger joint, plus doing these letters because she can speak to the dead. She writes letters so people can communicate with their dead loved ones, and that's how she's getting all her money. And her mom has this abusive boyfriend who has been basically living with them now. He eats up all the food. And she's just really going through it. And one of the guidance counselors at school notices, and she's afraid of being taken away by CPS. So she's trying to make it look like she has shit all together, but he's like, you're skipping school a lot, you're losing weight, like, is something wrong? And Cottrell has this like incident with her mother's boyfriend, and he ends up shooting her beloved dog. She is so upset that she ends up writing a letter, even though a previous ghost visitor advised her not to write any more letters. And this letter ends up bringing her dog back to life. So here is her new money-making opportunity. She starts writing letters so that she can get the money to live the lifestyle she wants to live. She goes and stays at a hotel, like she's able to afford nice clothes, and it seems like everything is going great at first, and then everything starts spiraling out of control. She starts breaking down, she's losing weight, everybody notices how tired she is all the time and how drained she is, and it's a lot to handle. Plus, her mother is horrible and keeps like demanding more of her. Her mother refuses to work or take responsibility for anything. And I thought this book did a wonderful job, like actually going in about those types of parents and how bad they are and how you need to remove yourself from those types of situations, even though it is painful and you're not sure where you might end up. Sometimes I read YA and there are these horrible parent situations and nothing is done. Like, we just kind of brush it off. So I was nervous that this was going to be like one of those books where I just brush off the mother's awful deeds to try and redeem her at the end. And no, that never happened. And I really appreciate that. I really appreciate how it showed that there are adults who actually cared about Nichole, who weren't her mother, who only gave a crap about herself, and how she could use Nichole to her benefit. And even though this book was very painful, I thought it was so well done. You could tell that the author just really has experience with the issues that she was discussing in this book. I read her middle grade novel earlier this year. She goes by the name Jazz Taylor, I believe. Under that, when she writes middle grade, and both of them were really well done and had great displays of friendship. I said this one was a little bit heavier, but overall I really enjoyed it and I highly recommend this one. So definitely check out Bad Witch Burning. Just make sure you're in the right mindset for a heavier type of read when you dive into it. Alright, and then the last book I read for the month of August was A Lot Like Adios by Alexis Daria. And that was one of the perfect reads that I needed after something so heavy like Bad Witch Burning. Alexis Daria wrote A Lot Like Adios. I'm sorry, she wrote You Had Me at Hola, which was one that I really enjoyed last year. It was kind of like it had like a telenovela in it, and I really appreciated that one. So it was nice to read another Latinx romance. And this one follows Michelle and Gabe. Michelle is living in New York as a freelancer, and Gabe owns a gym in California. They grew up as best friends living right next door to each other. However, right after high school graduation, they kind of tried to act upon some feelings that they had been secretly harboring, and when they tried to act upon those feelings, then Michelle finds out that Gabe had plans to leave for college and not come back, and that really upset her because they were supposed to go to school together, and they stopped being friends. And then Gabe stopped visiting New York because he fell out with his parents over all the pressure that they were constantly putting on him. So he's afraid to come back to New York, and he was hoping he wouldn't have to. However, his partner Fabian just has too much on his plate right now, with his wife about to give birth to twins, and his mother and father are going through some things. So it's like, I'm sorry, and you have to go in my place to New York and help with the opening of our new gym location. While Gabe is reluctant to go, he agrees. He ends up finding out that Fabian also hired Michelle to work on this marketing campaign for them because he liked her work on a campaign she did for another company. And he agrees to go down to New York and stay with Michelle, not knowing her apartment is under renovation, and so she's staying at her parents' house, and her parents' house happens to be right next to his parents' house. He's freaking out because he has to avoid his family who lives right next door because he has not talked to them in years. And he and Michelle have a lot of tension, and she's just like, okay, we need to get over this tension between us. Let's just fucking get it over with. And they do, and then they're still not sure where their feelings are, but they're like, okay, well, I like you. We used to have feelings like before, so let's see where this goes. And then their family ends up getting involved, and that adds to the craziness of it. I thought the portrayals of like the families were really well done. Michelle is Puerto Rican and Italian, and Gabe is Puerto Rican and Mexican. And they have these big, loud families who are all up in their business, and I just thought that was great. There were a lot of funny moments in this. The sex scenes were really, really, really steamy. I really enjoyed them. I liked how open Michelle was about what she wanted, and how Gabe was happy to comply. And they actually both really like sci-fi, and they were obsessed with this one TV series. So there are these interstitials that show them as teens working on this fanfic. That part didn't really interest me as much, even though I was hoping it would, because like most of them are about the planning of the fanfic. So by the time we actually get the story of the fanfic, I'm just like, yeah, I was over that, because I didn't really feel like we got to know a lot about the the show that they loved so much that inspired the fanfic. But I thought this story did a great job balancing both the drama that they had with family and career, as well as just rebuilding their relationship. Gabe kind of has to realize like his parents weren't actually setting out to harm him like he thought. They were just raising him the best that they could, even though there were some things that were toxic. They've kind of learned from back then, and are wanting to have a relationship with him again. And he also has to figure out where he wants the gym to be, because what the gym is now is not what he imagined. And then Michelle is still reeling from a bad breakup, and she's kind of like at a crossroads, like where does she want to take her career, like is she lovable. So I thought that was really great. Highly recommend checking out A Lot Like Adios. And that was everything I read in the month of August. So you can definitely check up and see how it matches up with my August TBR video that I did. I got to read everything on that list, but The Bones of Ruin, I started The Bones of Ruin in August, but I didn't get to finish it till September. And I have high hopes for my September. I'm not really going to set a TBR, but there are a lot of books that are on my radar, and we'll see how it goes. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you all so much for your support. I am almost at 100 followers now, which I didn't think would happen. And I look forward to talking to you guys soon.